Hello, today we are going to speak about recipient verification address. This is a very important feature on FortiMail. It's used always not to exhaust our FortiMail unit with receiving email messages from external sources to accounts that are not existed into our domain controller or LDAP server or maybe SMTP server. So simply, it's a way of integrating with a third-party server to verify that the recipient part in the email message sent from external sources exists into this server, whether it's LDAP or SMTP or whatever the kind of the server is. So again, to simplify this feature, we have a domain protected configured on FortiMail, right? This domain has some email addresses configured on it to be receiving email messages from external sources. What recipient verification address mean is simply FortiMail will verify that this email address exists into this mail server protected by FortiMail itself. How can this happen? This could happen through integrating with one of servers that has all the list of email addresses, like for example LDAP or SMTP server. The configuration process is very simple. The first thing is we need to create this third-party server profile, whether it's LDAP or SMTP. In our case, we are going to configure LDAP. Then we need to set the email query on the user on Active Directory. This part will be queried from FortiMail to make sure that email address exists or not. Then we need to enable this feature, which is called the recipient verification address on the level of the domain. So again, first thing, we need to configure a profile on FortiMail called LDAP. This profile defines the Active Directory server that I will go and ask for these email addresses to verify that they are existed or not. And make sure that on the part of email, you configure the email address for each user on your Active Directory, because this is the part that will be queried by FortiMail after you integrate with it. And of course, there are some scripts used here in this area to configure all the email addresses for all the users in your Active Directory without going for each user and put the email address manually. After you put your email address in each user query option, you need to enable this feature on the level of the domain, and then you can choose the profile that you will integrate with to verify that the user exists or not. So let's start our lab directly. The first thing we need to do is to create our LDAP profile. So under profile, you will have a tab here called LDAP. Click on new, then here put a name. So I will name it test.local, for example. Put the IP address for your Active Directory related to test.local, and this is the fallback server if you have any additional domain controller. Here on the base DN, put your base DN. It will be DC test DC local. Bind DN, it's the administrator. If you have any service account, you can put it here. But in my case, I will put administrator directly. For the bind password, put the password for this account. Then here on the user query option, we need to make sure that we choose here Active Directory. So I will choose Active Directory here. Then also I can query the group option also to get all the groups inside my Active Directory. Then I will click create to start creating my LDAP profile. The second thing that we need to do, not to forget to put the email part in each user in Active Directory. I'm here on test.local. I have created a new user called Bob. If I double click this user, you will find that I put Bob at test.local into this part. Let me create a new user. I will call this user Haaland. It's the second user that I have created on each mail server. So I will click next here, then let's put a password, click on next, and then finish. Very good. So here I have two main users. One is called Bob. I put the email query option here, and this user I didn't put anything, and I will keep it as you see here to make sure I can't send email messages to this user because it's not verified on Active Directory that it exists as email address to receive email messages. Okay, very good. But before I test the scenario, I need to add this user on each mail on Thunderbird. So I will open Thunderbird here, and then I will click on settings, account actions, and then add email account. Here I will name it Haaland, and then put the password. Here we need to put the domain, then configure manually. Here bot name, IMAP port, outgoing server port 25, then retest to make sure that you got the settings correctly. Okay, click on done to add your user account, confirm. So I added a new user here called Haaland. This user shouldn't get any messages from the external world because it's not a part of our recipient address verification. During testing, we are going to see this. Before we test, we need to see if I queried LDAP, I can see this email address. Let me do so. So I'm here on FortiMail. If I double click this profile one more time, here there is an option called test LDAP query. If I click on it, and then I will put the first email address bob@test.local and then click on test. So as you see, it tells you it's found user DM matching the email address bob users test.local. So if I bot Haaland at test.local, what is your expectation here? Unable to find user DN that matches the email address because I didn't bot this query option into this user. Okay, finally we need to enable this feature on the level of the domain. So I will go to domain and users, then domain, double click on this domain. This is our protected domain. There's a feature here called recipient address verification. Here I will choose LDAP server. Then I will choose my LDAP server, and if you found that this user is invalid recipient, what will you do? Reject or discard. So I will keep it at reject and then I will click OK. Then the rest of our video today is testing. I will test here from Chris, send email messages to both Bob and Haaland and see the result. So let's click on right here. Destination for the first time will be Bob. Subject will be testing Bob. Then the body will be testing recipient address verification Bob. Then click on send. Secondly, we need to test Haaland. So I will write a new message to Haaland at test.local. Subject will be testing Haaland and the body will be testing recipient address verification for Haaland. Click on send. Let's get back to FortiMail and open monitor to see results. Okay, so first of all, as you see, Chris sent a message to Bob, testing Bob. It's sent successfully. It's accepted. But for the second message, Chris wants to communicate with Haaland and it's rejected. Why? Because it's recipient verification. If we follow with this session ID, here on the last message, I will double click on it. Okay, no information here. Let me see this one. So it tells you that user is unknown because it's integrated with LDAP and queried this email address and it didn't find anything. Okay, let me add user Haaland. Let me add the email address to user Haaland and see the results one more time. And as you see here, by the way, Bob received the message, but Haaland didn't receive anything. Let's open Active Directory on Haaland. On the email part, I will put Haaland at test.local. Click on apply and okay. Let me resend the message again and see the result. Here on extranet.local. Okay, so on Chris, I will write a new message to Haaland. Okay, with the subject, and then I will click on send to test if I will be able to send this message to Haaland or not. As you see here, the message is accepted successfully to Haaland. And finally, Haaland got a new message from Alice.